I'm Penelope, 68 years old, a retired elementary school teacher, and mother to Amanda and Michael. For 30 years, I poured my heart into teaching children and raising my own. Amanda and I were inseparable until she married into the wealthy Harrison family 3 years ago. Last Mother's Day, I watched in silent humiliation as my daughter presented her mother-in-law with a $25,000 diamond ring while handing me a $10 plastic frame. The pain cut deeper than any knife, but what she didn't expect was how I would finally respond. If you're watching this, let me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that like and subscribe button, and settle in for a story about what happens when a mother finally stands up for herself. I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, in a blue-collar family where hard work and honesty were valued above all else. My father worked at the local factory, while my mother kept our modest home spotless and dinner on the table every night at 6. They taught me that wealth was measured by love, not dollars, a lesson I carried throughout my life. After high school, I moved to Chicago for college, studying elementary education at Northwestern University. It was there I met Thomas, a kind-hearted engineering student with gentle eyes and a quiet determination. We married shortly after graduation, settling into a comfortable brick bungalow in a middle-class neighborhood where we planned to raise our family. Amanda arrived on a snowy February morning in 1991, a tiny bundle with curious eyes and a strong set of lungs. From the moment I held her, I knew I would move mountains for this child. Her brother Michael followed 3 years later, completing our family. As they grew, Thomas and I dedicated ourselves to giving our children everything we could afford while teaching them the value of hard work. Thomas advanced steadily at his engineering firm, while I taught 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary School, a job that filled my heart with purpose despite the modest salary. Amanda showed exceptional talent in dance from age 7. Despite our tight budget, I was determined to nurture this passion. I took on weekend tutoring jobs to pay for her lessons at Chicago Academy of Dance, one of the city's premier studios. Many nights, I sat up until dawn, sewing sequins onto costumes we couldn't afford to buy ready-made. I still remember driving through blizzards to get Amanda to important recitals, sometimes traveling 4 hours each way for competitions in neighboring states. I'd pack sandwiches to save money on restaurant meals and bring thermoses of coffee to stay awake during the long drives home. Amanda would sleep in the backseat, trophy clutched to her chest, while I fought exhaustion behind the wheel. "Mom, you're the best," she'd often say, eyes shining with appreciation. Those words fueled me through years of sacrifice. Amanda was not only talented, but academically gifted as well. She graduated high school as valedictorian and earned a partial scholarship to University of Chicago. Thomas and I emptied our savings and took out a second mortgage to cover the remaining tuition. We never told Amanda how we struggled financially during those years because we didn't want her focusing on anything but her education. Every Sunday during college, Amanda would come home for dinner, filling our kitchen with stories about professors and campus life. I'd spend all day preparing her favorite meals, savoring these precious hours together. She'd often stay overnight, and we'd talk late into the evening about her dreams and ambitions. After graduating with honors in marketing, Amanda landed an entry-level position at a prestigious advertising agency in downtown Chicago. I helped her furnish her first apartment, scouring thrift stores and garage sales for pieces I could refurbish. We spent weekends painting and decorating until her small studio became a charming home. As Amanda climbed the corporate ladder, her wardrobe and tastes evolved. She began shopping at boutiques I could never afford, but she remained grounded and grateful. Every birthday and Christmas, she'd present me with thoughtful, albeit modest gifts, often handmade cards containing heartfelt messages that I treasured more than any expensive present. Everything changed when Amanda met Warren Harrison at a charity gala 5 years ago. Warren came from old money, his family owning Harrison Luxury Automobiles, a chain of high-end car dealerships across the Midwest. Tall, polished, and Princeton-educated Warren moved in social circles far removed from our middle-class world. When Amanda first brought Warren to Sunday dinner, Thomas and I tried to make a good impression. I prepared my best pot roast and used the good china we'd received as wedding gifts. Warren was polite, but somewhat distant, his eyes taking in our modest home with barely concealed assessment. "Your home has such character," he commented in a tone that felt more like criticism than compliment. 2 months later, Amanda took me to lunch and excitedly showed me her engagement ring, a diamond so large it looked almost comical on her slender finger. "Warren's parents are thrilled," she gushed, "especially his mother Jacqueline. She's already talking about venues and florists." That was my first indication that Jacqueline Harrison would be a dominant force in their relationship. When I finally met her at the engagement dinner held at the Chicago Yacht Club, my suspicions were confirmed. Jacqueline was a statuesque woman with perfectly coiffed silver hair and the kind of confident posture that comes from a lifetime of privilege. "So you're a teacher," she said upon introduction, as though I'd admitted to being a street sweeper. "How quaint." Throughout the evening, Jacqueline monopolized the wedding discussion, speaking of designers and destinations that made my head spin. When I tentatively mentioned a beautiful garden venue Thomas and I had visited, Jacqueline dismissed it with a wave of her manicured hand. "The Harrisons have married at St. Bartholomew's Cathedral for generations," she stated firmly, followed by a reception at the peninsula, of course. I noticed how Amanda nodded eagerly at each of Jacqueline's pronouncements, her eyes seeking approval. Something tightened in my chest as I watched my confident daughter transform into an eager-to-please young woman in Jacqueline's presence. The wedding planning became an exercise in exclusion. Amanda and Jacqueline scheduled dress fittings and venue visits during my teaching hours, despite my offers to take time off. When I did manage to attend, my opinions were politely acknowledged, then promptly ignored. The wedding itself was a lavish affair with 500 guests, most of whom were business associates and social connections of the Harrisons. Thomas and I knew perhaps 50 people in attendance. I wore a pale blue dress I'd splurged on at Nordstrom, feeling plain beside Jacqueline's custom-made Vera Wang ensemble. During the reception, I overheard Jacqueline telling a friend, "We're simply thrilled Warren found someone with Amanda's potential. A few rough edges to smooth out, but nothing a little guidance won't fix." I wanted to speak up to defend my beautiful, accomplished daughter, who needed no fixing, but I swallowed my words, not wanting to create tension on Amanda's special day. That night, as Thomas and I drove home in silence, I told myself things would settle into a new normal once the wedding excitement faded. I was wrong. The wedding wasn't the end of Jacqueline's influence. It was just the beginning. After returning from their honeymoon in the Maldives, Amanda and Warren purchased a 5-bedroom home in Lake Forest, one of Chicago's most exclusive suburbs. Not coincidentally, their new residence was just 3 streets away from the Harrison family estate. The first time I visited their new home, I felt like I needed a map to navigate its vast spaces. Marble floors echoed under my sensible shoes as Amanda gave me a tour of rooms furnished with antiques and art pieces that looked like they belonged in a museum. Jacqueline helped us with the interior design, Amanda explained, gesturing to a painting that probably cost more than our entire home. "She knows all the best decorators." I nodded and smiled, swallowing the comment that the house, while undeniably beautiful, felt nothing like the warm, cozy spaces Amanda had always loved. There were no soft throws, no mismatched bookshelves stuffed with dog-eared paperbacks, none of the little touches that had made Amanda's first apartment so uniquely hers. In those early months, I made consistent efforts to maintain our close relationship. I'd call every few days suggesting lunch dates or movie outings like we used to enjoy. Amanda's responses grew increasingly delayed, her excuses more elaborate. "I'd love to, Mom, but Jacqueline's introducing me to the garden club committee this weekend." "Sorry, can't make it. Warren and I are attending a charity auction with his parents." "Not this week, Mom. Jacqueline's teaching me to play bridge with her society friends." Jacqueline. Jacqueline. The name began to trigger an involuntary tightening in my chest. When Amanda did find time for me, our conversations had changed. She'd scrutinize my appearance with new critical eyes. "Mom, you should really consider updating your hairstyle," she said during one lunch. "And those shoes are so dated. I know a wonderful boutique where we could find you something more current." I looked down at my comfortable loafers, perfectly serviceable and within my retired teacher's budget. "These are comfortable, honey, and they were a splurge for me at $80. Amanda winced as though I'd mentioned something distasteful. "Well, investment pieces are worth it. Jacqueline says quality footwear is the foundation of a proper wardrobe." The first holiday season after the wedding brought another painful adjustment. For 33 years, Amanda had spent Christmas Eve and morning with us, a tradition filled with familiar rituals and shared memories. That year, she called 2 weeks before Christmas. "Warren and I will be spending the holidays at his parents' ski lodge in Aspen," she informed me. "The whole Harrison family goes every year. It's tradition." "But our Christmas morning cinnamon rolls are tradition too," I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "And opening one gift on Christmas Eve while drinking hot chocolate." "That's sweet, Mom, but this is important for our future. We'll try to stop by before we leave for the airport." They didn't. Instead, I received a text message on Christmas Eve, apologizing for their busy schedule and promising to catch up after the new year. Thomas and I sat beneath our modestly decorated tree on Christmas morning, the plate of cinnamon rolls growing cold between us, exchanging glances that contained volumes of unspoken sadness. Despite these disappointments, I continued trying to nurture our relationship. I sent thoughtful care packages to their home filled with homemade cookies and small gifts I thought Amanda might enjoy. I offered to help when she mentioned hosting dinner parties, drawing on years of experience entertaining on a budget. "Thanks, Mom, but Jacqueline has connected us with her caterer," was the typical response. "And she's bringing over her housekeeper to help with setup." 6 months after the wedding, Amanda and Warren hosted a housewarming party. I spent hours selecting a special gift, finally deciding on a handcrafted quilt from a local artisan, its blues and greens matching Amanda's new dining room. The party was more like a society event than a casual gathering. Women in designer dresses clutched champagne flutes, while men in bespoke suits discussed stock portfolios and golf handicaps. Thomas and I stood awkwardly in a corner, conspicuously underdressed despite wearing our Sunday best. When I presented Amanda with the quilt, she smiled tightly. "Thank you, Mom. It's very homey. Perhaps it would work in one of the guest rooms." Later, I overheard Jacqueline in the powder room speaking to another elegantly dressed woman. "Amanda's parents are sweet, simple people. Not quite what we envisioned for Warren, but she's adapting nicely to our world. Barely mentions her old life anymore." Old life. As if loving parents and a happy childhood were something to be ashamed of and hidden away. That evening, I watched my daughter move effortlessly among Chicago's elite, adopting their mannerisms and conversation topics. She laughed at inside jokes about exclusive vacation spots I'd never visit, and nodded knowledgeably during discussions of wine vintages I couldn't pronounce. I barely recognized this polished, status-conscious woman as the daughter who once helped me plant marigolds in our backyard garden. Warren, standing tall beside her, occasionally placed a proprietary hand on Amanda's lower back, steering her toward important guests. I noticed how his gaze would flicker dismissively over Thomas and me when introducing us, his tone subtly apologetic. "Amanda's father was in engineering," he'd say, as if Thomas hadn't managed major infrastructure projects throughout his career. "And her mother taught elementary school." Was, not is, as though our identities had been reduced to past tense. The following week, I confided my concerns to my son Michael during his visit. Michael had always been more grounded than his sister, choosing to become a high school counselor rather than chase wealth or status. He'd married Rachel, a kindergarten teacher, and they lived in a modest home not far from us with their young son. "I've noticed it too, Mom," Michael admitted as we sat at our kitchen table. "Last month I invited Amanda and Warren to Dylan's birthday party. She texted back that they had a previous engagement, but then I saw on social media they were at some wine tasting with the Harrisons. I feel like I'm losing her, Michael," I confessed, tears welling in my eyes. Like everything your father and I taught her about values and what really matters in life has just evaporated. It's Warren's influence, Michael said, his expression troubled. And especially his mother's. But Amanda's an adult making her own choices. Some of them aren't great right now. I nodded, wiping my eyes with a napkin. I keep telling myself it's just a phase, that eventually she'll remember who she really is. Maybe, Michael said gently. But in the meantime, don't let it destroy you, Mom. Amanda needs to figure this out herself. His advice was sound, but difficult to follow. I began reading books about adult children and changing family dynamics. I joined an online support group for parents feeling estranged from their grown children. I even attempted to adapt to Amanda's new world, updating my wardrobe within my means and researching current events so I could contribute to conversations. None of it seemed to bridge the growing chasm between us. With each passing month, my daughter became more entrenched in the Harrison family's orbit and more distant from her own roots. I watched helplessly as the warm, genuine young woman I'd raised transformed into someone who seemed to value appearance over authenticity, status over sincerity. Still, I held on to hope that beneath the designer clothes and social climbing ambitions my real daughter remained. I just needed to be patient enough, loving enough to eventually reach her. Then came Mother's Day, and the moment that shattered even that fragile hope. Mother's Day had always been special in our family. Since she was old enough to hold a crayon, Amanda had created handmade cards filled with heartfelt messages that I treasured more than any store-bought gift. Even during college and her early career, she'd make time for a proper celebration, often cooking me breakfast or taking me to our favorite local restaurant. So when Amanda called to invite me to a Mother's Day luncheon at her home, I was thrilled. Perhaps this was a sign that she was reconnecting with our family traditions. "We're having a special celebration," she said. "Dress nicely, okay?" I spent the next week looking forward to this opportunity to strengthen our bond. I visited 3 department stores before finding a lovely lavender dress that flattered my figure while remaining age-appropriate. I had my hair styled at the local salon and splurged on a professional manicure, wanting to look my best for this important day. For Amanda's gift, I created a custom photo book chronicling our mother-daughter journey from her infancy through college graduation. Each page featured carefully selected photographs, accompanied by handwritten memories and life lessons we'd shared. The final page held a recent photo of us together at her wedding, with a note expressing my pride in the woman she'd become and my eternal love for her. I'd spent weeks on this labor of love, hoping it would remind Amanda of our special connection. The morning of Mother's Day dawned bright and clear. Thomas had passed away from a sudden heart attack 18 months earlier, making family connections feel even more precious. I dressed carefully, applied subtle makeup, and secured the gift box with a handmade bow before driving the 40 minutes to Lake Forest. As I turned into Amanda and Warren's circular driveway, my heart sank slightly at the sight of multiple luxury vehicles already parked there. I recognized Jacqueline's silver Mercedes convertible among them. So this wouldn't be the intimate mother-daughter reunion I'd hoped for, but a larger gathering. Still, I plastered on a smile and gathered my purse and gift, determined to make the best of the situation. The front door swung open before I could ring the bell, revealing Warren in crisp linen pants and a pastel button-down shirt. "Penelope," he greeted me, using my first name as always despite my gentle reminders that I preferred Mrs. Sullivan from my son-in-law. "You're the last to arrive. Everyone's on the terrace." I followed him through the grand foyer and out to the sprawling back terrace where an elegant scene awaited. A long table draped in pale pink linen held elaborate floral centerpieces and gleaming silverware. Crystal glasses caught the sunlight, creating tiny rainbows across the pristine tablecloth. Around the table sat Warren's entire family: his parents, his sister and her husband, his maternal grandmother, and 2 aunts. Amanda bustled about adjusting place settings and directing a uniformed server. She wore a designer dress. I'd never seen her hair and makeup flawless. "Mom!" she called when she spotted me hurrying over to air-kiss my cheek. "Happy Mother's Day! You look nice." Before I could respond, Jacqueline approached resplendent in a coral silk ensemble that probably cost more than my monthly pension. "Penelope, how lovely you could join us," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Amanda has prepared quite a special celebration." I soon discovered that Amanda had prepared very little. The gourmet lunch was catered, the flowers professionally arranged, even the hand-lettered place cards had been created by a calligrapher Jacqueline recommended. My daughter had simply signed the checks. My place card sat at the far end of the table opposite from Amanda, who was positioned between Jacqueline and Warren's grandmother. Throughout the meal, I tried to participate in the conversation, but it revolved around country club memberships, recent renovations to the Harrison vacation home, and an upcoming charity gala that apparently cost $5,000 per plate to attend. "Mom's chairing the committee this year," Amanda said, proudly glancing at Jacqueline with undisguised admiration. "She's already raised over $1 million. "That's wonderful," I offered. "When I was teaching, we raised money for classroom supplies by holding bake sales. The parents were so generous with their time." A brief, uncomfortable silence followed before Warren's sister smoothly changed the subject. I felt my face flush as I realized my contribution to the conversation had been deemed unworthy. After dessert, an elaborate tiered cake decorated with sugar flowers, Warren tapped his crystal glass with a silver spoon. "It's time for gifts," he announced. "Let's start with the mothers-in-law." Jacqueline went first, unwrapping a large box with elegant precision. Her gasp seemed rehearsed as she lifted out a velvet jewelry case. "Open it, Mother," Warren urged with a satisfied smile. Inside nestled a stunning platinum ring centered with a large emerald surrounded by diamonds. Even from across the table, I could see its exceptional quality. "It's a $25,000 custom piece from Tiffany," Amanda explained, her voice carrying clearly across the terrace. "We had it designed specifically for you using the emerald because it's your birthstone." Jacqueline's eyes misted as she slipped the ring onto her finger. "It's absolutely exquisite, darlings. I'm speechless." The table erupted in appreciative murmurs and compliments as the ring was passed around for closer inspection. Warren's father nodded approvingly. "Excellent taste, son. Your mother deserves the best." I sat quietly, fingers nervously tracing the edge of my carefully wrapped gift. $25,000. The amount was staggering, more than half my annual pension. Finally, Amanda turned to me with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Now for Mom's gift." Warren's sister handed me a small, lightweight package wrapped in what appeared to be leftover Christmas paper. The tape was applied haphazardly, the corners misaligned. Even before opening it, I could tell minimal effort had been invested. With everyone watching, I carefully removed the wrapping to reveal a plastic picture frame, the kind sold at drugstore checkout counters for about $10. Inside was a generic photo of flowers, clearly the stock image that came with the frame. Not a personal picture, not even a photo of Amanda and me. "It's a frame," Amanda said unnecessarily. "I thought you could put a nice picture in it." "I picked it up yesterday when we were getting cards for everyone," Warren added casually. "Amanda remembered we needed something for you. Remembered they needed something for me. As though a Mother's Day gift for the woman who had given birth to Amanda, who had devoted her life to raising her, was an afterthought, a box to check off a list." I stared at the cheap plastic in my hands, struggling to maintain my composure. The contrast between the thoughtful, expensive gift for Jacqueline and this last-minute token for me couldn't have been more stark or more painful. "Thank you." I managed my voice barely above a whisper. "It's very practical." "You're welcome," Amanda replied, already turning back to Jacqueline, who was still admiring her emerald ring in the sunlight. "Mom, doesn't Jacqueline's ring look amazing with her complexion?" The jeweler said, "The stone quality is exceptional." I nodded mutely, fighting the burning sensation behind my eyes. Around me, the celebration continued with Warren's family exchanging expensive gifts and effusive thanks. My photo book remained untouched in its box beside my chair, suddenly seeming inadequate and foolish in this setting. "Excuse me," I murmured after several minutes of sitting invisibly at the end of the table. "Could someone point me to the restroom?" Inside the marble-clad guest bathroom, I locked the door and finally allowed the tears to fall. I stared at my reflection in the ornate mirror, seeing a woman who had become irrelevant in her own daughter's life, replaced by the wealth and social standing Jacqueline represented. The plastic frame sat on the counter beside me, its cheapness almost vulgar in the luxurious surroundings. Had Amanda even considered how this would make me feel? Did she care? I splashed cold water on my face, reapplied my lipstick, and straightened my shoulders. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I would finish this luncheon with dignity, then figure out what to do about the gaping wound in my heart. When I returned to the terrace, dessert was being served. Amanda barely glanced my way, engrossed in conversation with Jacqueline about an upcoming shopping trip to New York. I ate mechanical bites of cake that tasted like cardboard, nodding and smiling when appropriate, while inside, I felt myself shutting down. As the gathering finally wound to a close, I collected my purse and the plastic frame, leaving the photo book on my chair. What was the point in giving it now? It would only highlight the disparity in our feelings for each other. "Thanks for coming, Mom," Amanda said distractedly as I prepared to leave, her eyes already on Jacqueline, who was showing her new ring to the caterer. "We should do coffee sometime." "Yes, we should," I replied, knowing it would never happen unless I initiated it, and for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to. The drive home was a blur of tears and aching solitude. The plastic frame rode shotgun in the passenger seat, a tangible symbol of my diminished value in my daughter's life. With each passing mile, the pain transformed, hardening into something else. Something with edges sharp enough to cut through the fog of hurt and confusion. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had made a decision. This Mother's Day had shown me a truth I could no longer ignore. If I wanted to survive this heartbreak, something would have to change. Not just in Amanda's behavior, but in my own. I barely remember entering my empty house that Mother's Day evening. The silence enveloped me as I dropped my purse and the plastic frame on the entryway table, not bothering to turn on lights as I made my way to the living room. I sank onto the sofa Thomas and I had chosen together 20 years earlier, its familiar comfort offering no solace now. The full weight of the day's humiliation crashed over me in waves. Each memory, Jacqueline's smug expression as she displayed her expensive ring, Amanda's casual dismissal of my presence. Warren's barely concealed condescension felt like another stone added to the burden crushing my chest. I curled onto my side, still in my carefully chosen dress, and gave myself permission to fall apart completely. Sobs racked my body, tears soaking into the cushions as I released months of accumulated hurt. How had my relationship with my beloved daughter deteriorated to this point? What had I done wrong as a mother to deserve such callous treatment? As darkness fell outside, I finally dragged myself to the bedroom, changing into the soft flannel pajamas Thomas had given me our last Christmas together. I pulled out the photo albums stored in my bedside table, albums I hadn't looked at since his funeral, because the memories were too painful to revisit alone. Now I turned the pages, slowly tracing my finger over images of a younger Amanda, gap-toothed and beaming in her first dance costume, serious-faced on her first day of middle school, radiant at her high school graduation with Thomas and me flanking her, our faces shining with pride. "Where did you go?" I whispered to the smiling girl in the photographs. When did money and status become more important than family? Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying the day's events and wondering if I'd somehow misinterpreted everything. Perhaps I was being oversensitive. Perhaps Amanda had other pressures I didn't understand. Perhaps, but no. There was no misinterpreting the stark contrast between a $25,000 custom ring and a $10 plastic frame grabbed as an afterthought. There was no justification for such a public display of preferential treatment. My phone rang early the next morning. It was Michael, eager to hear about the Mother's Day celebration. "How was lunch at Amanda's?" he asked cheerfully. "Did she do something special for you?" The concern in his voice when I remained silent broke the fragile dam of composure I'd managed to rebuild overnight. Through tears, I recounted the entire humiliating experience, including the ring for Jacqueline and my pathetic plastic frame. "She did what?" Michael's voice rose in disbelief and anger. "Mom, that's beyond disrespectful. It's cruel." "I don't understand what happened to her," I said, dabbing at my eyes with a tissue. "This isn't how we raised her." "It's that whole Harrison family," Michael said, his tone hardening. "They've warped her values completely. I'm going to call her right now and tell her exactly what I think of her behavior." "No," I said quickly. "Please don't, Michael. I need to handle this myself in my own way. Confronting her while I'm this hurt will only make things worse." He reluctantly agreed, but insisted on coming over that evening with Rachel and Dylan. Their visit was a balm to my wounded spirit. 5-year-old Dylan's innocent affection and Michael and Rachel's genuine concern reminded me that I was still valued, still loved, even if Amanda had lost sight of my worth. After they left, however, the emptiness returned. I moved through the following days in a fog of depression, going through the motions of my routine while feeling hollow inside. I skipped my weekly bridge game with friends, canceled my book club appearance, and let calls go to voicemail. I couldn't bear to answer the inevitable questions about how I'd spent Mother's Day. Amanda didn't call that week, not to check if I'd arrived home safely after the luncheon, not to thank me for coming, certainly not to apologize for the insulting gift disparity. Her silence spoke volumes about my place in her priorities. The plastic frame remained where I'd dropped it, gathering dust on the entryway table. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, nor could I display it. It had become a totem of my failure, both as a mother who couldn't compete with Jacqueline's wealth and sophistication, and as a woman who had allowed herself to be treated with such disregard. By the end of the week, the emotional turmoil began manifesting physically. I had no appetite, losing 5 pounds in 7 days. Sleep remained elusive, leaving dark circles beneath my eyes. Even my daily walks around the neighborhood felt like insurmountable challenges. On Friday afternoon, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened it to find my 2 closest friends, Susan and Gloria, standing on the porch with determined expressions and a bottle of wine. "We've been calling you for days," Susan said, brushing past me into the house without waiting for an invitation. "When you didn't show up for book club, we knew something was wrong." Gloria followed, carrying a bag of takeout from our favorite Italian restaurant. "We figured if you wouldn't come to us, we'd come to you." Their kindness broke through the protective shell I'd built around myself. Sitting at my kitchen table, the familiar comfort of friendship surrounding me, I finally shared the Mother's Day disaster in its entirety. "That little ingrate," Gloria fumed, her retired librarian's composure slipping. "After everything you've done for her." "It's not just Amanda," Susan pointed out. "It's that whole toxic environment she's in now. Warren and his mother have convinced her that money equals worth." "But she was raised better than this," I insisted, the hurt evident in my voice. "We taught her that character matters more than possessions, that how you treat people is what defines you." "Sometimes those lessons get lost when someone's surrounded by different values," Susan said gently. "Especially when there's pressure to fit into a new social circle." So, what do I do now? I asked, looking between my two friends. Pretend it didn't happen. Confront her. Cut her off completely. Gloria reached across the table to squeeze my hand. What do you want to do? Penelope, not what you think you should do as a mother, but what you want to do for yourself. Her question caught me off guard. For decades, my identity had been defined by motherhood, by putting my children's needs before my own. What did I want for myself? I want to be respected. I said slowly, the realization crystallizing as I spoke. I want Amanda to see me as a person of value, not just an obligation or an embarrassment. And if she can't do that right now, I need to protect myself from more hurt while she figures it out. My friends nodded in understanding, and for the first time since Mother's Day, I felt a flicker of clarity amidst the pain. Something had to change, and perhaps that change needed to start with me. The conversation with my friends marked a turning point. After they left, I sat alone in my kitchen, their words echoing in my mind. What do you want for yourself? The question felt revolutionary after decades of putting everyone else first. My initial impulse was anger-driven to call Amanda immediately and unleash the hurt and rage that had been building since Mother's Day. I even picked up my phone several times, finger hovering over her contact information. But something stopped me each time. Lashing out from pain would only create more distance between us, and deep down, despite everything, I still loved my daughter and hoped for reconciliation. Instead, I made an appointment with Dr. Martinez, a therapist I'd briefly seen after Thomas died. During our session, I poured out the whole painful story, the growing estrangement, the Mother's Day humiliation, my feelings of worthlessness in comparison to Jacqueline. What you're describing is a significant shift in the power dynamic between you and Amanda, Dr. Martinez observed. She's asserting her new identity by aligning with her in-laws' values, even when that means devaluing you. But why? I asked, dabbing at tears with a tissue. What did I do wrong? Dr. Martinez leaned forward, her expression compassionate but firm. This isn't about something you did wrong, Penelope. It's about Amanda's choices, and perhaps her insecurities in this new world she's entered. The question now is, how will you respond? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to just accept whatever scraps of attention she offers because I'm afraid of losing her completely. And what message would that send to Amanda about your worth, about how you deserve to be treated? Her question struck home. By accepting mistreatment, I was reinforcing the idea that I deserved no better. If I wanted Amanda to value me, I needed to demonstrate that I valued myself. Over the following week, I immersed myself in research about healthy boundaries, emotional manipulation, and toxic relationships. I joined an online support group for parents experiencing similar situations with adult children. The stories I read there were both heartbreaking and illuminating. I wasn't alone in this struggle. One book in particular resonated deeply, When Those You Love Devalue You, by a respected psychologist. The author emphasized that while we cannot control others' behavior, we can control our responses and the standards we establish for how we'll allow ourselves to be treated. With these insights taking root, I began developing a plan not just for addressing the situation with Amanda, but for rebuilding my own sense of self-worth regardless of her response. I started by reconnecting with parts of myself that had nothing to do with being Amanda's mother. I rejoined the community theater group I'd abandoned after Thomas died, signing up to help with set design for their summer production. I resumed my volunteer work at the local literacy center, tutoring adults working toward their GEDs. Each small step outside my grief and hurt helped restore a sense of identity beyond motherhood. I was Penelope Sullivan, a retired educator, an artist, a friend, a community volunteer, a whole person with value that existed independently of my daughter's recognition. I also began practical preparations for a more substantial change in our relationship. I made an appointment with my bank to review my finances and open a separate account that Amanda couldn't access. While I'd never imagined needing to protect my assets from my own child, the Mother's Day incident had revealed a troubling pattern that I couldn't ignore. One afternoon, I visited a high-end consignment shop and sold several pieces of fine jewelry Thomas had given me over the years. It was painful to part with these mementos, but they had been sitting unworn in my jewelry box since his death. The substantial sum they fetched would fund the next phase of my plan. Throughout this process, I kept Michael informed of my intentions. We met for coffee at a small cafe midway between our homes, away from curious ears. "I'm worried about what this might do to your relationship with Amanda," he said after I'd outlined my thinking. "She's not going to take this well." "I know," I acknowledged, "but continuing as we are isn't working either. She needs to understand there are consequences to treating people as disposable, especially family who loves her." Michael nodded slowly. "You're right. And for what it's worth, I think Dad would be proud of you for standing up for yourself. He always hated seeing you hurt." His words brought tears to my eyes. Thomas had indeed been my staunchest defender, often stepping in when I was too conflict-averse to advocate for myself. Perhaps it was time I channeled some of his strength. "What about your will?" Michael asked tentatively. "I know you and Dad had planned to leave the vacation cottage to Amanda." The lakeside cottage in Wisconsin had been our family's summer retreat for decades. Thomas and I had purchased it as a fixer-upper when the children were small, gradually renovating it over the years into a charming getaway. Amanda had always loved it there, spending hours swimming in the lake and roasting marshmallows at our fire pit. In recent years, however, she'd visited less frequently, finding the rustic accommodations beneath her new standards. "I've been thinking about that," I admitted. "I have an appointment with Mr. Daniels next week to review everything." As my plan took shape, I found myself sleeping better, eating regularly again, and feeling more centered than I had since the Mother's Day debacle. I wasn't acting out of spite or revenge, but from a place of self-preservation and newly discovered self-respect. I also prepared emotionally for the possibility that Amanda might choose to cut ties completely rather than accept this new dynamic. The thought was painful, but I reminded myself daily that a relationship built on emotional manipulation and disrespect wasn't really a relationship worth preserving. In meditation sessions recommended by Dr. Martinez, I visualized releasing my attachment to specific outcomes. I couldn't control Amanda's reaction. I could only control my own actions and boundaries. If reconciliation happened, it would need to be on terms that honored both of us. 3 weeks after Mother's Day, I was finally ready. I'd found my voice, clarified my boundaries, and prepared practical alternatives for various scenarios. Most importantly, I'd reconnected with my own worth, independent of Amanda's validation or Jacqueline's approval. I was no longer just waiting passively for the next hurt. I had a plan. On a warm Tuesday afternoon in June, my phone rang with Amanda's ringtone, a sound that had become increasingly rare. I took a deep breath before answering, centering myself in the newfound strength I'd been cultivating. "Mom?" Amanda's voice had that particular tone I recognized from childhood, the one she used when she wanted something. "I need a favor." "Hello, Amanda," I replied evenly. "How are you?" She bypassed the pleasantry. "I'm planning a surprise 70th birthday party for Warren's father next month. It's going to be at the Lake Forest Country Club, very exclusive. I need your help with some of the preparations." "What kind of help?" I asked, noting how she hadn't bothered to inquire about my well-being in the month since Mother's Day. "I need you to help address all the invitations. Jacqueline insists they be handwritten, and you have nice penmanship. There are about 200. And maybe you could help with assembling the party favors. They're custom cigar and brandy gift sets for the men and spa packages for the women." The old Penelope would have immediately agreed, eager to please and maintain connection at any cost. But I was no longer that woman. "I'm sorry, but I won't be able to help with that," I said calmly. I have other commitments. A surprised pause followed. What commitments? Can't you reschedule? This is important, Mom. My commitments are important to me, I replied, not elaborating further. I hope you find someone else to help. Mom, what's going on? Amanda's voice sharpened with irritation. You've never been too busy to help me before. This was the opening I'd been waiting for. Actually, Amanda, I've been doing some thinking since Mother's Day about our relationship and how it's changed. Mother's Day, what about it? Her genuine confusion was perhaps the most hurtful part. She truly didn't realize how her actions had affected me. You gave your mother-in-law a $25,000 custom ring, I said, keeping my voice steady. You gave me a $10 plastic frame that still had the drugstore sticker on the back. A frame that didn't even contain a personal photo. Is that what this is about, a gift? Amanda scoffed. Mom, Jacqueline expects certain things. It's different with you. Yes, it is different, I agreed. Because you respect her and value her approval. You don't appear to feel the same way about me anymore. That's ridiculous, Amanda protested, but her voice held a defensive edge. Of course I respect you. You're my mother. Being your mother doesn't automatically earn me respect, Amanda. Respect is demonstrated through actions, and lately your actions have shown that I'm an afterthought in your life, someone to be tolerated rather than valued. You're overreacting, she insisted. The ring was Warren's idea anyway. He wanted to do something special for his mother. And you couldn't suggest doing something similarly thoughtful for your mother, or at least putting a personal photo in the frame instead of the stock image of flowers that came with it. The silence that followed told me she had no good answer. Look, she finally said, her tone softening into the cajoling one she'd used as a teenager when trying to extend her curfew. I'm sorry if your feelings were hurt. I've just been really busy with social obligations and Warren's family events. I'll make it up to you, okay? Maybe we can do lunch next week at that little cafe you like. Her non-apology and patronizing offer only reinforced my resolve. Amanda, this isn't about one lunch or one gift. This is about a pattern that's developed since you married Warren. I've become increasingly peripheral in your life, valued only when I can be useful, or when you need something like addressing 200 invitations for your father-in-law's party. That's not fair, she protested. I've included you in plenty of things. As what, a charity case, someone to be tolerated because obligation demands it. The way you and the Harrisons looked at me during that Mother's Day luncheon made it clear where I stand in your new world. You're being dramatic, Amanda said, her voice hardening. I knew you'd never understand the social pressures I'm under. Jacqueline says, I don't care what Jacqueline says. I interrupted, surprising both of us with my firmness. This conversation is between you and me, mother and daughter. Jacqueline has no place in it. Amanda gasped slightly at my directness. I'd never spoken to her this way before. I can't talk to you when you're like this, she said after a moment. I'll call Warren. He'll explain how things work in our world. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Warren right on cue. I declined it, focusing on Amanda. I don't need Warren to explain anything, I said. What I need is for my daughter to see me as a person worthy of basic respect and consideration, not an inconvenience or an embarrassment because I don't fit into your new social circle. That's not how I see you, Amanda insisted, but her protest sounded hollow even to her own ears, I suspected. Your actions suggest otherwise, I replied softly. And until that changes, I need to protect myself from further hurt. I won't be available to help with party preparations or attend family gatherings where I'm treated as less than. I love you, Amanda, but I also need to love myself enough to establish boundaries. She was silent for so long I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, in a voice smaller than I'd heard from her in years, she asked, Are you saying you don't want to see me anymore? I'm saying I want to be treated with the same respect you show to Jacqueline, I clarified. I'm saying I deserve better than being an afterthought. Whether that happens is largely up to you. After we hung up, I sat in my garden watching bees navigate between the flowers Thomas and I had planted together. I felt lighter somehow, unburdened by the need to contort myself to fit Amanda's new expectations. Whatever happened next would be revealing. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, my doorbell rang insistently. When I opened it, I found Warren standing on my porch, his normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled, as if he'd rushed over directly from work. "Penelope," he began without preamble. "We need to discuss this misunderstanding with Amanda." "There's no misunderstanding, Warren," I replied, making no move to invite him in. "I've been very clear about my feelings." "Look," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Amanda's upset. She says you're refusing to help with my father's birthday celebration because of some perceived slight on Mother's Day." "It wasn't perceived," I stated firmly. "It was quite real and quite intentional." Warren sighed with exaggerated patience. "These things are complicated. In our social circles, certain expectations exist. My mother has a particular standing that requires acknowledgement." "And I don't?" I asked quietly. "That's not what I meant," he backpedaled. "It's just different. Amanda understands that." "What Amanda understands," I replied, "is that your family's approval is contingent on her prioritizing your mother over me. What she hasn't understood is that her behavior has consequences." Warren's expression hardened. "Is this about money? Because if you're feeling financially neglected—" "This has nothing to do with money," I interrupted, anger flaring. "This is about basic human dignity and respect, something you and your family seem to measure in dollar amounts." "Now wait just a minute," Warren began, drawing himself up to his full height in an attempt to intimidate me. "No," I said firmly. "This conversation is over. Please tell Amanda that when she's ready to speak to me directly without using you as a buffer, I'll be here." I closed the door on his surprised face, hands shaking but resolve steady. For perhaps the first time since Amanda had married into the Harrison family, I'd refused to be cowed by their wealth and social position. The following morning brought another unexpected visitor. I was pruning roses in my front garden when a silver Mercedes convertible pulled into my driveway. Jacqueline emerged immaculate as always in a linen pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. "Penelope," she called, approaching with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I thought we should have a little chat, woman to woman." I set down my gardening shears and removed my gloves, slowly buying time to compose myself. "Hello, Jacqueline. This is unexpected." "Yes, well, when family harmony is threatened, sometimes direct intervention is necessary," she replied, glancing disapprovingly at my modest home. "May we speak inside?" I led her to my living room, making no apologies for the comfortable but unfashionable furnishings. Jacqueline perched on the edge of my sofa, as if afraid it might contaminate her designer outfit. "I understand you're upset about Mother's Day," she began, her tone suggesting she was addressing a petulant child. "I've come to smooth things over." "Have you?" I asked, settling into Thomas's old armchair. "Or have you come to ensure I don't disrupt the carefully curated world you've created for Warren and Amanda?" Her eyes narrowed slightly, the pleasant facade slipping. "I've only encouraged Amanda to embrace the opportunities available to her through marriage to my son. Opportunities you and your husband could never provide." The deliberate cruelty of her words confirmed what I'd long suspected. Jacqueline had been actively working to separate Amanda from her roots. Amanda was raised with love, integrity, and the understanding that a person's worth isn't determined by their bank account or social standing, I replied evenly. "Those are values your family seems to have systematically undermined." "Don't be naive," Jacqueline scoffed. "Love doesn't pay country club memberships or open doors to the right social circles. I've given Amanda access to a world she could only dream of before." "At what cost?" I asked. "Her authenticity, her compassion, her ability to recognize the difference between genuine affection and social climbing." Jacqueline waved a dismissive hand, the emerald ring catching the light. Amanda understands what matters in our world. She's adapted beautifully. She's changed fundamentally, I corrected, and not for the better. That's your opinion, Jacqueline replied coldly. An opinion shaped by jealousy, I suspect. It must be difficult watching your daughter exceed your station in life so dramatically. I might have once wilted under such an attack, but not anymore. What's difficult is watching my daughter become someone who would humiliate her mother to impress her mother-in-law. Someone who would discard decades of love and sacrifice for social advancement. Something flashed across Jacqueline's face, not guilt, but perhaps recognition that I wasn't as easily manipulated as she'd expected. Let me be direct, she said, dropping all pretense of friendliness. Your attitude is causing problems for Amanda in our family. Warren's father is particularly displeased by this display of emotionality. It reflects poorly on everyone. I'm sorry my refusal to accept disrespect is inconvenient for your family dynamics, I replied, my tone matching her directness. But I won't apologize for expecting basic consideration from my daughter. What exactly do you want? Jacqueline demanded. A more expensive gift, financial support, a place at our social functions? I want my daughter back, I said simply. The one who understood that character matters more than status. The one who wouldn't have dreamed of treating anyone, let alone her mother, as disposable. Jacqueline stood abruptly. That version of Amanda is gone. She's a Harrison now, and the sooner you accept that, the easier things will be for everyone. As she spoke, we both became aware of another presence. Amanda stood in the doorway, her face pale, eyes moving between us. Mom, she said, and I wasn't sure which of us she was addressing. What's going on here? Just a little woman-to-woman chat? Jacqueline replied smoothly, recovering her composure. Clearing the air? Is that true? Amanda asked me directly, something in my expression clearly conveying a different story. No, I said honestly. Jacqueline came to pressure me into dropping my concerns about how I've been treated because apparently my feelings are causing inconvenient problems for the Harrison family image. Jacqueline? Amanda turned to her mother-in-law, confusion evident. You said you were going shopping today. Jacqueline's mask slipped further. This is more important than shopping, Amanda. Your mother is threatening the harmony we've worked so hard to establish. By expressing hurt feelings, I asked, by expecting to be treated with basic dignity. Stop twisting my words. Jacqueline snapped, her carefully cultivated elegance fracturing. Amanda understands where her priorities should lie now. Do I? Amanda asked quietly, looking at Jacqueline with new eyes. Because right now, it sounds like you're saying my mother doesn't deserve consideration because she isn't wealthy or socially connected. Don't be absurd, Jacqueline backtracked. I'm simply saying different relationships have different expectations. Your loyalty now is primarily to the Harrison family. And my mother should accept whatever scraps of attention I offer because she doesn't have your social standing. Amanda pressed, her voice gaining strength. Is that why you suggested the plastic frame for Mother's Day? Because you said Mom wouldn't know the difference anyway. The revelation hung in the air between us. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and renewed hurt. You deliberately suggested a cheap gift, I asked Jacqueline. I simply pointed out that your taste runs more practical than mine, Jacqueline replied defensively. Amanda agreed. I didn't know about the emerald ring until that day, Amanda admitted, looking at me with dawning horror. Warren handled his mother's gift. I just went along with everything like I always do. Tears welled in Amanda's eyes as the full impact of her behavior became clear to her. For the first time in years, I saw genuine emotion break through the polished exterior she'd developed. I need to go, Jacqueline announced, gathering her purse. Amanda, we'll discuss this at home where we can be more rational. No, Amanda said, the single word falling like a stone between them. I think I need to talk to my mother, alone. Jacqueline's expression hardened as she realized she was losing control of the situation. Without another word, she brushed past Amanda and left the door closing firmly behind her. In the silence that followed, Amanda and I regarded each other across a gulf created by more than just the physical space between us. She looked younger, somehow more vulnerable, like the daughter I remembered before wealth and status had reshaped her. I've been awful, haven't I? She whispered, tears streaming freely now. You've been lost, I corrected gently. The question is, do you want to find your way back? Amanda nodded slowly, then more firmly. I do, but I don't know if I remember how. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation, yet just the possibility of a beginning. But for now, that was enough. 2 weeks passed without word from Amanda after our confrontation with Jacqueline. I maintained my resolve, focusing on the positive changes I'd implemented in my life rather than anxiously awaiting her call. The volunteer work at the Children's Hospital brought particular joy, reminding me of my years in the classroom and the meaningful difference educators make in young lives. During this period of silence, I proceeded with the most significant part of my plan. After consulting with my attorney, Mr. Daniels, I finalized the sale of our family vacation cottage on Lake Geneva. The property had appreciated considerably over the decades, and the sale netted just over $700,000. Rather than keeping these funds for myself or adjusting my will to disinherit Amanda, I established the Sullivan Education Foundation, a trust dedicated to providing college scholarships for disadvantaged students from my former elementary school. The first recipients would be selected the following spring, creating a legacy that honored both Thomas's and my commitment to education as a transformative force. Are you sure about this? Michael asked when I shared my decision. That cottage was meant to stay in the family. I'm sure, I replied with surprising peace. The cottage holds beautiful memories, but it's just a building. This foundation will help deserving children for generations to come. That's a legacy your father would have been proud of. My 69th birthday arrived on a perfect June day. Susan and Gloria organized a small celebration in my garden, inviting several friends from my various social circles. Surrounded by genuine affection and meaningful connections, I realized how much richer my life had become since I'd started valuing myself enough to establish boundaries. As we enjoyed cake and conversation in the dappled afternoon sunlight, a car pulled into my driveway. Amanda emerged alone, clutching a large gift bag. She hesitated at the garden gate, uncertainty evident in her posture. Is there room for one more? She asked quietly. My friends exchanged glances, protective of me after witnessing my pain these past weeks. There's always room for you, I replied, gesturing to an empty chair beside me. The celebration continued somewhat awkwardly at first, but my friends graciously included Amanda in their conversations. I noticed subtle changes in my daughter. Her designer outfit replaced by a simple sundress. Her normally perfect makeup minimal, her practiced social smile absent. When my friends departed later that afternoon, Amanda remained behind, fidgeting with her purse strap as we cleared the last of the plates. I should have called first, she said. I didn't mean to intrude on your party. It's fine, I assured her. It was good to see you. We moved to the porch swing that Thomas had installed when we first bought the house. For several minutes, we swayed gently in silence, the familiar creaking of the chains soothing in its constancy. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Amanda finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. About who I've become, about the choices I've made. I remained silent, allowing her the space to continue. When I married Warren, I was so dazzled by everything, the wealth, the social connections, the lifestyle I'd only seen in magazines. It felt like stepping into a dream. She twisted her wedding ring, a massive diamond that had always seemed too large for her slender hand. Jacqueline took me under her wing, teaching me how to navigate their world, and I was so grateful for her approval that I never questioned her influence. She's a very powerful personality, I acknowledged. She's manipulative, Amanda corrected bluntly. After that day here with you both, I started seeing things differently, remembering comments she'd made about you, subtle ways she'd scheduled events to conflict with our family traditions, how she'd critique any gift I considered for you as too extravagant for someone of your mother's taste. Amanda reached for the gift bag she'd brought, placing it tentatively between us. I made you something. It's not expensive, but… Inside was a handcrafted scrapbook, its cover embellished with pressed flowers from my garden. As I turned the pages, tears welled in my eyes. Amanda had compiled photographs spanning our entire relationship from her infancy through recent years, each accompanied by a handwritten memory or reflection. I found the photo book you brought on Mother's Day, she explained, voice breaking. The one you left behind. It inspired this. I wanted you to know that I do remember Mom. I remember everything you sacrificed for me, everything you taught me. The final page held a letter, pages long, expressing regret for her behavior and gratitude for my unwavering love despite her treatment. The closing lines read, I don't expect forgiveness immediately or perhaps ever, but I want you to know that I'm finding my way back to the person you raised me to be, the daughter who would never have hurt you so carelessly. I closed the book, gently overcome with emotion. Thank you for this, I managed. There's something else you should know, Amanda continued, straightening her shoulders. I've moved out of the Lake Forest house. Warren and I are separating. This surprised me. Because of what happened with us? Partly, she admitted. But it's been building for a while. After seeing Jacqueline's true colors that day, I started noticing similar patterns in Warren. The constant criticism disguised as helpful suggestions. The way he'd dismiss my opinions unless they aligned with his family's views. The subtle reminders that I'd married up and should be eternally grateful. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it, despite everything I hadn't wished for her marriage to fail. Don't be, Amanda replied with unexpected firmness. It's clarifying, actually. I'm staying in a small apartment downtown while I figure things out. I've already applied to work at a nonprofit marketing firm that promotes educational access for underprivileged communities. That sounds meaningful, I observed, noticing the spark in her eyes that had been absent for years. It pays about a quarter of my current salary, she said with a small laugh. Jacqueline nearly fainted when I told her. But for the first time in years, I'm excited about work that matters, rather than just accumulating status symbols. We talked until dusk settled around us, the conversation flowing more easily as hours passed. There were still hurt feelings to address, trust to rebuild, but the foundation remained solid beneath the damage. As Amanda prepared to leave, she hesitated at the door. I understand if you need more time before we can be close again. I know I've hurt you deeply. We'll take it one day at a time, I promised, reaching for her hand. That's all any of us can do. 6 months later, on Christmas Eve, my living room filled with genuine warmth as Michael's family and Amanda gathered around the tree. Warren and the Harrisons were notably absent, the divorce proceedings underway, but not yet finalized. Amanda had settled into her new apartment and job, finding unexpected fulfillment in working with educational charities. Our relationship had begun healing through careful steps, regular phone calls, occasional shared meals, honest conversations about boundaries and expectations. The wounds hadn't disappeared, but they had started to scar over, no longer raw and bleeding. The following May brought another Mother's Day approaching with some trepidation on both our parts. The memory of the previous year's humiliation still lingered. Rather than elaborate celebrations, Amanda suggested a simple breakfast at my favorite local diner, followed by planting new flowers in my garden together. As we dug our hands into the rich soil, working side by side in comfortable silence, I reflected on the painful journey we'd traveled. The Mother's Day disaster had been devastating, But it had also been necessary, a breaking point that forced change when nothing else could have. I spoke with Mr. Daniels last week, I mentioned casually. About the foundation. The first scholarships will be awarded next month. Amanda nodded, having long since come to terms with my decision to sell the cottage. That's wonderful, Mom. Dad would have loved knowing his legacy is helping children access education. He would have, I agreed, patting soil around a young rosebush. I've been thinking about taking a more active role with the foundation. Maybe mentoring some of the recipients. You'd be amazing at that, Amanda said warmly. You've always been a natural teacher. We continued working the rhythmic activity soothing as we discussed my volunteer work at the Children's Hospital and Amanda's progress in therapy, where she was processing the emotional manipulation she'd experienced during her marriage. Later, as we shared iced tea on the porch, Amanda asked, "Do you ever regret standing up to me last year, setting those boundaries, even though it was painful for both of us?" I considered the question carefully. No, I finally replied. It was necessary not just for me, but for you too. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone we love is refuse to participate in dynamics that diminish either of us. Amanda reached over to squeeze my hand. Thank you for being brave enough to do that, for loving me enough to let me face the consequences of my actions, even when it hurt. As I looked at my daughter, not the polished, status-conscious woman she'd temporarily become, but the authentic, compassionate person re-emerging from beneath that facade, I felt profound gratitude for the painful journey we'd traversed together. The most valuable gift I'd given myself last Mother's Day wasn't confrontation or boundary setting. It was the recognition of my own worth independent of anyone else's validation. That self-respect had ultimately created space for a healthier relationship with Amanda, one built on mutual regard rather than obligation or status. Some families measure wealth in designer labels and country club memberships. Others in lakeside cottages and modest pensions. But the truest form of wealth I'd learned was the courage to value yourself, even when others fail to see your worth, and the wisdom to surround yourself with those who recognize your true value without price tags attached. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself while keeping the door open for reconciliation? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need encouragement to value themselves. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is inherent, not something others can grant or take away. Wishing you the courage to honor yourself and the wisdom to recognize those who truly deserve a place in your heart.